It is imperative for the United States to decouple from China. And it has been going on for nearly 2 years. Today we use a more realistic and market-oriented perspective. After the decoupling of China and the United States, the impact on each other. Ever since Trump imposed an embargo on Huawei chips in May 2019, everyone has been saying, the United States wants to decouple from China. Trump is even more eloquent, confident, and announcing to the American public. Trump said that the US can completely decouple from China's trade. The United States does not need to trade with China, does not need to do business with China, and does not buy anything from them. The decoupling referred to by the Trump administration includes economic decoupling, decoupling from trade, and decoupling from technology. Not only that, the Trump administration has also restricted China's scientific and technological personnel, international students, come to the United States. At the same time, the United States banned Chinese teachers and volunteers teaching at the Confucius Institute. The beautiful name of the United States, prevent China's penetration of the United States. This is already a cultural decoupling. Therefore, we have talked about the United States decoupling from China for almost 2 years. Today, who is going to decouple from whom? Who has decoupled from whom? Also, after decoupling, who will suffer more? Young Feng still remembers that in 2019, 2 years ago, many people heard that the United States was about to decouple from China. I am very happy thinking that China is miserable now. As long as the United States imposes an economic blockade on China, coupled with a technological blockade, China will be beaten back for decades. So, in fact, is it true? Let us first take a look at the results of the trade war between the United States and China. Last year, 2020, January 15, China and the United States signed the first phase of the trade agreement. After this trade agreement is signed, even if it is only the first phase of the trade agreement, that also means that the United States cannot decouple from China's trade. At the same time, on the other hand, this also shows that the United States and China have failed in a trade war. Although the United States took advantage of the first phase of the trade agreement, because China will increase its purchases of American products within 2 years, the total amount must reach $200 billion. In particular, last year the new crown epidemic broke out globally, and the United States highly relied on Chinese medical products. For example, masks, ventilators, and medicines. Although the United States is desperate to de-link from China's trade, the irony is that, last year, the US trade with China bucked production and hit a record high. Therefore, it can be said that in terms of trade, the United States wants to decouple from China, which is a complete failure. So, what is economic decoupling? Last week, the Biden administration announced that it would unite Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Engage in a new semiconductor supply chain alliance. Then the United States will cooperate with Australia to establish a complete rare earth supply chain. In addition, the United States wants to cooperate with Japan and South Korea in terms of battery for pure electric vehicles. In medical care, the United States will cooperate with other countries. In short, the United States must establish a supply chain without China in these 4 major areas. Completely kick China out. Yang Feng's video on February 25. What is the chance that the United States, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan will kick China out of the supply chain? In this episode, Yang Feng said that Biden's plan is only preliminary. For the time being, the United States is first in semiconductors, rare earths, electric vehicle batteries, and medical products. Form a supply chain without China. If it succeeds, Biden will establish new supply chains in other areas, still excluding China. The United States must gradually expand and extract China from the global supply chain one by one. This is the economic decoupling from China in Biden's plan. Biden's move is very ruthless, not just to establish its own supply chain. In addition, we must kick China out and isolate China. This is at the same time isolating China in terms of trade, economy, and technology. Quite a powerful trick. So, can Biden's idea be successful? In other words, at least in a certain part, a certain project, will succeed? For example, in the semiconductor supply chain. Because this is a superior project of the United States to China, this is a crushing advantage. Especially the United States plus Japan, adding South Korea plus Taiwan, is almost a complete semiconductor supply chain. Only the EUV lithography machine from ASML in the Netherlands. Will the United States succeed? This question depends on the person who holds the position to answer it. We then come to reason and hope that everyone will check it out later. Before reasoning, let's take a look at the domestic reaction in the United States. Of course, let's exclude the reaction of politicians first, because American politics, almost kidnapped, the two parties in the United States now only have political correctness. Do you still remember former Microsoft CEO, Bill Gates? He should be regarded as the first corporate tycoon to jump out and oppose the US blockade of Chinese technology. Bill Gates' point of view is that the United States has imposed a blockade of Chinese chips, sanctions on science and technology. It will only force China to fully develop their semiconductor industry. This is not good for the United States. Because once China develops its own chip manufacturing technology and related application software, as well as semiconductor equipment, etc., China no longer needs the United States. Another typical corporate figure, the former CEO of General Electric, Jeff Immelt. General Electric, stock code is GE. He said in an interview with the Washington Post on March 1, he opposes the decoupling of Sino-US economic and trade relations. His reason is, the United States cannot send the Chinese market to Europe and Japan. He said that there is no benefit for American companies to lose the Chinese market. This only allows competitors such as Europe and Japan to become stronger and bigger. And these competitors will not listen to the United States. Then he continued, if American companies lose the Chinese market, for example, Boeing's airplanes, drugs sold by American pharmaceutical companies, will the United States really get better without the Chinese market? He also said the second reason, Europe will not stop trading with China. Japan will not stop trading with China. Therefore, we will basically let Europe's competitors and Japan be even stronger. GE, Taiwan's translator, is a singular company. What kind of company is it? GE is actually a typical industrial company in the United States. Businesses include aviation, medical, electricity, and renewable energy. This may be too general. GE's famous business includes aircraft engines. It is said that every 2 seconds in the world an aircraft takes off with a GE engine. In addition, GE's nuclear power plants are also quite famous. Now let's talk about Yang Feng's views. For many years, people who invest in real estate or who want to buy a house have known this sentence. What are the 3 core elements of buying a house? Believe that your agent will tell you this: location, location, and finally location. In the United States, they would say location, location, and location. In terms of economy or trade, they are actually similar concepts. The market, and finally the market. The United States used to rely on its huge domestic market to sanction other countries at any time. Why? Because the United States is the world's largest domestic consumer market. In the past, if some countries did not listen to the United States will restrict these countries' exports to the United States. The American trick is quite powerful. But now it's feng shui taking turns, 10 years in Hedong, 10 years in Heshi. China surpassed the United States in 2020 last year and became the world's largest domestic consumer market. China's identity is different, not to mention that in the past, China was the second largest consumer market in the world. The United States has no way to block China. What's more, today, China is the world's largest domestic consumer market. And to make matters worse, this largest market, it is still growing at a relatively high rate. Looking at this fact, in the eyes of other countries, who would be uninterested? Who would be willing to listen to the United States and not trade with China? EU countries will not listen to the United States, Japan will not listen to the United States, and South Korea will not listen. Those who listen to the American language, such as Australia, suffer from Beijing's trade restrictions. Then, to make matters worse, when Australia suffered from China's trade restrictions, the United States can't help yet. In other words, the United States is not willing to help at all. Young Fong had several episodes of videos about Australia in late November last year. In those videos, Young Fong emphasized that the United States wants trade sanctions against China. The biggest problem with the economic blockade of China is that the United States cannot satisfy its allies. Their financial needs. For example, Beijing restricts Australian coal. There are also some agricultural products, so if the United States talks about loyalty, should buy those restricted products in Australia. Right. As a result, the United States did not. So now, how many other countries are willing to follow the United States to contain China? So far, there are probably only 5 alliance countries, such as Australia, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Another case. On March 1, Beijing restricted the import of pears from Taiwan. China's restraining order made the DPP jump and the Tsai Ing-wen government jumped. If the Tsai Ing-wen government cannot find other buyers, so, does the United States want to help buy these wind pears? The annual export value of Taiwanese pears to the mainland is less than 1. Converted into US dollars, it is about 50 million. For such a small amount, if the United States talks about loyalty, it should be bought. Or to share a little bit and help the Tsai Ing-wen government to import part of the wind pear. Or, the United States can deal with it, coordinate, and ask the allies to share the burden together. What's the result? Everyone has seen it too. If the US only requires allies or partners, restricted trade with China but didn't lead by example, they are still trading with China and even high-profile demands that China buy American products. However, other countries are relatively excluded. Let's give another example. After the United States imposed an embargo on Huawei's chips, however, some domestic chip manufacturers in the United States are open to sell some products to Huawei. However, other countries cannot get permission. This is tantamount to restricting foreign manufacturers, but trying to benefit their own manufacturers. The US's approach will certainly not convince the allies in their hearts. Let's look at it from another angle. The United States is indeed caught in the Thucydides trap, deeply afraid of China and surpassing the United States. Become the world's largest economy and the world's most powerful country. The United States is now trying all kinds of ways to suppress China's rise. However, the United States definitely knows a little bit. It just won't go into war with China easily. Why? It's very simple. The United States understands in its heart that if there is a war with China, it will inevitably hurt both sides, or it will hurt the enemy by 1,000 and self-damage by 800. This result, on the contrary, has not taken advantage of other countries. Countries such as Japan, Russia, Germany, and France will certainly be very happy. This is the competition between snipe and clam, the fisherman gains. The United States had a strategic theory in the past, and Yang Fong called this theory an offshore balancer. What is an offshore balancer? Simply put, it is standing on the shore, seeing people fighting. I am watching the tiger fight from the mountain. In the late 1990s, scholars in the United States suggested that China and Japan could fight together. Even if it's a nuclear war, it doesn't matter. The US waited until they were almost done, then came out to mediate and reap the benefits. Now the United States is doing well, jumping in by itself and fighting against China, and it is against China in all aspects. Such a result will definitely deplete the national power of the United States. The result is that other countries take advantage. In this regard, military principles and economic principles are also interlinked. All in all, it is not to be able to consume one's own strength to achieve others. However, it is clear that the United States has made this mistake now. On the contrary, the European Union and Japan are watching the battle across the mountain. The European Union and Japan are saying that the United States wants to form a democratic alliance, yes. However, they all just stayed on their mouths and talked. When the United States asked them to stop trading with China, they refused to do it. Because, if you don't sell it to yourself, why do you ask them to do this? Therefore, the United States is now in trouble. In economics and trade, if you want to deal with China, but you can't find allies, let's deal with China together. Back to the issue of the market. A few years ago, China was already the world's largest trading country. Last year was the world's largest domestic consumer market. These two worlds' first signs are very loud and easy to use. You may have seen the movie Godzilla, right? Yang Feng is talking about the American version in 1998. Godzilla is making trouble in New York. In the movie trailer, the first sentence at the beginning, size does matter. A very magnetic and powerful sentence. The Google translation of this sentence is, size is important. Yang Feng gave a more popular translation, as long as the volume is large enough, many things will be different. Such a large volume has produced power in trade. Economically, including investment, whether financial or industrial, the power will be different and the impact will be different. They are all very different. Then, with such a large market, is there no way to produce its own industrial chain? Do you support your own industrial chain? This is the most basic logic and the most powerful reasoning. Yang Feng, use another metaphor. This is like the internal strength in martial arts novels. When the internal force is strong, any kind of moves can be used. The so-called flying flowers picking leaves can hurt people. Therefore, Yang Gua can make a wooden sword too. It is because Yang Gua's internal strength is strong enough. To be honest, this is a shortcoming of the United States. The United States cannot continue to maintain the world's largest domestic consumer market. Cannot keep it, the world's largest trading country. The United States is still the largest importer of trade. Because the domestic consumption in the United States is too large and its own productivity is insufficient, it must be imported from abroad, causing a huge trade deficit. In 2019, the value of U.S. foreign trade imports is nearly $25,000 billion. The value of China's foreign trade imports is nearly $21 trillion. There is a difference of $400 billion. In addition to what we just said, the U.S.'s advanced consumption borrowing and consumption, the main reason is that many imported goods are not prod. The United States urged China on Sunday, October 3, to stop its provocative military activities near Taiwan, after the island scrambled jets to warn away close to 100 Chinese military aircraft entering its air defense zone over a 3-day period. Taiwan, a democratically governed island that is claimed by China, has complained for more than a year of repeated missions near it by China's Air Force, often in the southwestern part of its air defense zone close to the Taiwan-controlled Pratas Islands. On Friday, Saturday and again on Sunday, Taiwan's defense ministry reported that China's Air Force had sent aircraft into the zone, with 39 on Saturday alone, the highest reported number to date. The United States is very concerned by the People's Republic of China's provocative military activity near Taiwan, which is destabilizing, risks miscalculations, and undermines regional peace and stability, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said in a statement. We urge Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure and coercion against Taiwan. The United States has an abiding interest in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, and will continue to assist Taiwan in maintaining a sufficient self-defense capability, Price added. Taiwan's foreign ministry thanked the United States for its concern, and said China was increasing tension in the Indo-Pacific region. In the face of China's challenges, our country's government has always committed itself to improving our self-defense capabilities and resolutely safeguarding Taiwan's democracy, freedom, peace and prosperity, it said. China has yet to comment on its activities, and it is not clear what may have caused Beijing to decide to mount the missions, though Friday was the country's national day, a patriotic holiday that marks the founding of the People's Republic. North Korea said on Sunday, October 3, the United Nations Security Council applied double standards over military activities among UN member states, state media KCNA said, amid international criticism over its recent missile tests. The Council met behind closed doors on Friday, October 1, upon requests from the United States and other countries over the North's missile launches. The meeting came a day after Pyongyang fired a newly developed anti-aircraft missile, the latest in a recent series of weapons tests including the launches of a previously unseen hypersonic missile, ballistic missiles, and a cruise missile with potential nuclear capabilities. Jo Kol-soo, director of the North Korean Foreign Ministry's Department of International Organizations, said the UNSC meeting means an open ignorance of and wanton encroachment on its sovereignty and serious intolerable provocation. North Korea said on Monday, October 4, it will restore severed inter-Korean hotlines starting Monday, but urged South Korea to step up efforts to improve relations, state media KCNA reported. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed his W. The former foreign minister will also seek to strengthen ties with the United States amid concerns over China's growing assertiveness and the recent resumption of missile tests by North Korea. Kishida, 64, will be elected premier by parliament when it convenes for an extraordinary session in the afternoon as the ruling coalition led by the Liberal Democratic Party, which chose him as its new leader last week, controls both chambers. Kishida replaces Yoshihide Suga, who is resigning amid criticism of his pandemic response. After naming his new cabinet, Toshimitsu Motegi is set to be retained as foreign minister, while Shinichi Suzuki will be tapped as finance minister and Hirokazu Matsuno as chief cabinet secretary. Kishida will be formally inaugurated in a ceremony at the Imperial Palace and hold a press conference in the evening. With around 60% of Japan's population fully vaccinated and COVID-19 cases in decline, Kishida's immediate task will be preventing another surge in infections while gradually lifting restrictions. Vowing to draw up an economic package worth tens of trillions of yen within the year to deal with the pandemic. Like Suga and Shinzo Abe before him, Kishida has underscored the importance of realizing a free and open Indo-Pacific and is expected to continue cooperation with the United States and other like-minded countries like Australia and India to address Beijing's expansionist moves in the South and East China Seas and tensions in the Taiwan Strait. Despite gray skies and gusty winds, Chancellor Angela Merkel and other leading politicians joined leaders from Germany's different faith groups to celebrate the milestone of 31 years of reunification between the former German Democratic Republic and West Germany. Politicians including Chancellor candidate Armin Laschet put coalition talks aside to take part in the service held at the Paulist Church in Halle. Germany was divided into East and West zones after World War II, with the Russian sector eventually becoming the German Democratic Republic, GDR/DDR. Germany remained divided for 40 years before the Berlin Wall was finally toppled in November 1989. The reunification process was expected to take up to 10 years, but was finalized on October 3, 1990, making Germany officially whole again. U.S. prosecutors on Saturday, October 2, said they charged a Saudi-born Canadian man for aiding the Islamic State militant group, alleging he tossed grenades in battle and worked with propagandists who publicized the beheading of hostages, including U.S. journalist James Foley. The Department of Justice described the man, identified as Muhammad Khalifa, as a leading figure in the English-language media unit of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, also known as ISIS. The department said Khalifa narrated English-language recruitment videos and was a battlefield fighter before he was captured in 2019 by the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, a militia group that controls parts of Israel occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which are claimed by the Palestinians, in the 1967 Middle East War, and has controlled them ever since. Yesterday, October 3, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune recalled the country's ambassador to France to return home for consultations. The decision came after French President Emmanuel Macron made irresponsible and inaccurate comments about Algerian politics and history. Relations between Algeria and France continue to be strained, after France's World Daily cited President Macron's negative comments about Algerian martyrs who fought for independence from French domination in 1962. In a statement, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune said this was an act of interference in Algeria's internal affairs. Tebboune stressed this is unacceptable and needs to recall the ambassador to France for consultation. Earlier, on Thursday, the Algerian government summoned the French ambassador to the country to express its opposition to France's decision to cut the number of visas granted to citizens of Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. The French side believes that this decision is necessary because all three countries have not had any effective measures to take back illegal immigrants who have been returned home. Immediately after recalling the ambassador to France to return home for consultations, the Algerian authorities imposed a ban on French military planes flying over their airspace. Relations between Algeria and France have steadily deteriorated in recent days. In a statement, French military spokesman Colonel Pascal Liani said, "The Algerian side had intercepted all French military aircraft flying over its airspace. Normally, these vehicles will have to fly through Algerian airspace to reach the Sahel region in West Africa, to participate in anti-radicalization activities there." Liani stressed that the French military operation and missions in the Sahel will not be affected by the flight ban from Algeria. Voters chose none of the 26 women who stood for election in Qatar's first legislative elections on Saturday, October 2, disappointing candidates who wanted to lend a voice for women and other Qataris in the Gulf monarchy's political process. The vote was for 30 members of the 45-seat Advisory Shura Council, while the Emir will continue to appoint the remaining 15 members of the body that can approve a limited scope of policies for the small but wealthy country, which bans political parties. A nursing manager who ran in Doha's Markia district, Aisha Hammam Al-Jazm, 59, said she had encountered some men who thought women should not run. Highlighting her administrative skills, she focused on policy priorities like health, youth employment, and retirement. "I just say, I'm strong, I'm capable. I see myself as fit as a man. If you want to see me as weak, that's up to you, but I am not weak," she said in the polling station where men and women had separate entrances. While a vote to elect the mayor of Tbilisi, Georgia, was held on October 2 local time. This is an important event for Georgia, as the country's politics have been in turmoil for the past few months. Since last year's parliamentary elections, the opposition United National Movement (UNM) party has boycotted the parliament, claiming that Georgia's ruling Dream Party cheated to win the election. The head of the UNM was previously arrested by the Georgian government in February, but released in May, after the European Union brokered a deal to ease the conflict between the ruling party and the opposition. Under the deal, the Dream Party would have to call a snap election if it won less than 43% of the local vote in the October 2 vote. However, Georgia's ruling party unilaterally withdrew from the agreement in July, prompting criticism from the EU and the US. Observers say that if the ruling party fails to meet the threshold stated in the agreement or refuses to hold parliamentary elections, it will spark many protests in the country. In a move to block opposition support, Georgian authorities arrested former president and opposition politician Mikhail Saakashvili after he returned to the country on October 1 to campaign for elections. Election was held a day later. Saakashvili's lawyer has criticized the arrest as a political detention. In a letter published a day later, former President Saakashvili, 53, said false, fabricated judgments by Russian President Vladimir Putin were the cause of the arrest. Delegates heading to the COP26 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow agreed they must deliver on the $100 billion per year pledge to help most vulnerable nations tackle climate change, COP26 President Alok Sharma said on Saturday. Talking after days of conferences on the pre-COP26 local weather occasion in Italy, Sharma stated there was a consensus to do extra to maintain the 1.5 levels Celsius goal inside attain, including extra wanted to be finished collectively when it comes to nationwide local weather plans. The COP26 convention in Glasgow goals to safe extra formidable local weather motion from the practically 200 international locations that signed the 2015 Paris settlement to restrict world warming to nicely beneath 2 levels Celsius, and to 1.5 levels ideally, above pre-industrial ranges. Millions of people across Europe may not be able to afford to heat their homes this winter as gas and electricity prices soar. Experts, anti-poverty organizations and environmental campaigners are warning that the coronavirus pandemic and rising prices have intensified a long-standing problem tied to a combination of high energy costs, low household incomes and homes that aren't energy efficient. Recent research led by Stefan Bozarovsky, professor at the University of Manchester and chair of Energy Poverty Research Network Engager, found that up to 80 million households across Europe were already struggling to keep their homes adequately warm before the pandemic.